Yes. So thank you so much. I guess my name is Amickoleh, and I'm actually I'm also a practitioner with Maha Rose. So I do online distance sessions.
I
And so
see.
I also work with the chakras. So I'm really interested to see if there's any correlation between Vedic astrology and the chakras. But before we dive all into
Yeah.
that, I would love for you to introduce yourself, let us know where you're located, and then just a little
Yes.
bit about how you got into Vedic astrology.
Of course. So my name is Oana Gonzalez. I'm located in Portugal
Mhm.
and southern Portugal. Yes, at the moment, at least. We'll
Yes.
see. I'm a bit of a digital nomad.
I love that.
And I've been practicing Vedic astrology since 2012.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
What was it for you that even kind of like led you down that path?
I was always I was always a spiritual seeker, basically,
Okay.
since I was very little.
Hmm.
And in my 20s, I met my spiritual teacher, Amachi, the
Okay.
hugging saint.
Yeah.
And she resides, when she doesn't travel, she resides in her center in southern India. Her center is an ashram,
Okay.
and that's a spiritual center. And so after
Mm.
meeting her in my 20s, I decided to, well, I left basically everything behind in London. I was living in London at the time, and I went to India for 1 month to her center to kind of clear my head. And
Wow.
the 1 month turned to 3 years. And while I was there, I had a Vedic astrology reading with a resident astrologer.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it because for the first time I felt seen through astrology.
Mm.
I had had Western readings before, but I never felt like they resonated. And when I had the Vedic reading, it was, oh, for the first time I'm being seen. It was a
Wow.
big moment for me. And after that, I became curious about it because I felt it was helping me accept myself more for who I
Mm.
am, learn more about myself, and also understand where I am in life. And that helped me um, align myself better.
Mm.
Yes, with
Mm.
what was going on for me. I can
Wow.
explain this a little bit better when we talk about the cycles of time or life cycles, astrological
Yeah.
cycles. That is something that's very unique to Vedic astrology. That will help
Ooh.
the viewers understand a bit better what I meant by finding out where I am in the cycle of time and aligning myself with that.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that so much. Yeah, let's jump into that. But before we jump into that, I am
Yeah,
curious because it kind of
sure.
sounds like you mentioned you went to the ashram for a month. That was your intention at least. And
Yes,
then you
yes.
stayed for 3 years. So I have a feeling the cycles of
Yeah.
time, there's something woven into that story.
Yes. Yes, I was in a very spiritual time of my life. I still
Mm.
am, but in a different way.
Mhm.
At that time, I was in a time where I was meant to have a lot of experiences and be close to my spiritual teacher.
Mm.
And so I stayed there, and for 3 years, I traveled with her as well when she traveled. The cycle I'm in now, it's a bit more grounded in the
Mhm.
day to day. And it's all about now discipline and doing my
Mm.
practices. And yeah,
Mm. I love that.
so it changed.
I love that distinction between there being like more of we can call it like a heady kind of experience where it's like the knowledge and the insight, and you're receiving so much. And then you make that distinction of like now you're in a much more grounded space where it's about the discipline. It's about, sounds like to me like more of like marrying I guess you can really call it devotion, where it's like where the insight meets the practicality of what it is that you've been sort of integrating into your life. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. The
Mm.
current cycle is also a cycle of work.
Hmm.
So I'm meant to be working.
Yeah, yeah.
And whereas before I was working, but I was doing what's called seva, which is selfless service. So it's just something you do
Mm,
for the community, within the community. But now I'm meant
mm,
to work more formally in the
mm-hmm.
world. So
I
I've been
love
doing
that.
that for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
it's been a
beautiful.
yeah, it's been a long process. So for me, Vedic astrology provided a lot of insight that helped me navigate the ups and downs of life so far. And I feel it's doing the same for my clients.
Mm,
And I remain a spiritual seeker at my core. So I continue to, for myself, I use it for, you know, to help the process of evolution.
mm-hmm.
But it can be used in different ways. It was intended originally as a very practical tool.
Okay.
So that was to help us, as I said, navigate a bit with more ease the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, be happier.
Yeah. Going back to the cycles of change, I'm curious, like what else came up for you around that?
Well, first of all, let me explain what I mean by that, just so we
Mm-hmm.
are all on the same page. So according to the seers, the Vedic seers of old, so Vedic
Mm,
astrology comes from the land of what is now known as India. And it is said to have been cognized by
mm-hmm.
sages in states of deep meditation. So they were shown by the divine directly that there is a relationship between the sky and our lives.
Mm,
And they were also shown that our lives unfold in cycles. And during each cycle, certain planet determines the major themes of our lives.
mm-hmm.
And if we become aware, most people are aware of that on some level, but it's nice to delve more deeply and gain even more understanding around what that cycle is meant to be about. And some cycles, encourage us, yes, to pursue spirituality. Others encourage us to focus on our family, maybe
Mm-hmm.
having children. Others are meant more for work, career,
Mm,
making a name for ourselves in the world. Others are meant for, building wealth. So it depends on what time of life you find yourself in.
mm-hmm.
Then those themes, yeah, of that planet and what the planet is doing in the chart will be very strong.
Mm.
Right.
So when you're with a client, for example, and
Yeah.
you're like, let's say you're looking at their natal chart, what is the difference between Vedic astrology and let's say like someone's maybe more familiar with Western astrology? What's the difference in approaches?
Um, well, I've never practiced Western astrology, so
Okay.
and since I had two readings in my early 20s and nothing since then.
Okay.
But I would say the idea with Vedic astrology is that our chart at birth, so the position of the planets in the sky at birth, it's like a map of our karmas.
Mm-hmm.
So the astrologer is reading, the idea being as well that we live many lifetimes, we reincarnate. I don't know
Right.
if that exists in Western astrology. And a lot of what we bring as characteristics, who we are, our tendencies, our lack or lack thereof in this lifetime, it's a consequence of past choices.
Mm.
And that in itself can also, it evolves throughout this lifetime as we grow and develop.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another chart we look at as Vedic astrologers that's kind of showing where we are likely to end up as a result of our
Oh.
efforts in this lifetime. Yes.
Oh.
And especially as we get older, our birth chart, often it doesn't apply as strongly. And I would talk to my clients and they will say, yes, I used to have this issue or I used to struggle with such and such problem, but I worked at it and now it's no longer such a problem anymore.
Mm.
But I
Okay.
do recognize it when you mention it. I know what you mean because I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced that for many years. And so we are constantly evolving, right? And that's merely a map of, our karmas as we enter this incarnation.
Mm.
And yeah, so I guess I forgot even why we were. Sorry. I
Just
just
the
lost.
difference of approaches between Vedic
Yes,
astrology. Mm-hmm.
right. And so the way, we discuss the various issues, and also it's important to understand that whatever we experience this time, it's a consequence of choices we've made in the past. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to take full responsibility for what's going on. As much as we'd like to say at times, it was my family who caused me to feel this way, or like, well, that is the reason we had a certain type of family, our parents were a certain way. So
Mm.
that's from the get-go. And
Mm.
then there is this theme of where we are here to awaken to the truth of who we really are.
Yeah.
And that's our ultimate goal. And we all have many psychological issues, things that feel like obstacles maybe for a
Yeah.
lot of people, and things that they need to work at. But the idea is that we're not just here to look at those issues and analyze them
Mm-hmm.
and look at our charts for that reason. It's also to see what's the way forward and
Mm.
work towards our spiritual, as we work towards our spiritual goal.
Wow.
I don't go into this much depth with all my clients.
It,
It's mostly with the ones that are open to this.
mm-hmm.
For the rest of my clients, Vedic astrology is just a tool. It's a very powerful divination tool.
Okay.
We can see what's coming up 6 months from now, 1 year from now, what's kind of cycle you're going to be in. And so people can align themselves a little bit better with the energy of the planet whose cycle they're running. And they can be a lot more effective and happier in their lives. Yeah, so sometimes it's used just in that way. And at other
Wow.
times we can go more deeply into things because Vedic astrology has its roots in the spirituality of India.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, it's deeply spiritual, in fact. And it's a very
Mm.
powerful spiritual tool as well. It can even show us the ways in which we are more, well, the spiritual techniques that we are, that would work best for us
Okay.
if we were to pursue a spiritual path. So it can guide us spiritually, specifically
Mm.
as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's the easiest, fastest route for us in this lifetime if we are seekers? Yes. So
Wow.
in that way, I don't know, maybe Western astrology also does this. As I
Mm-hmm.
say, as I said, I haven't had that much experience with it. But I think this is something Vedic astrology has as a unique characteristic, the fact that, the whole science of Vedic astrology is based on this idea of reincarnation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious how how far in the future have you been kind of like tapping into a forecasting lately, just as on a collective front?
Oh, by collective, you mean humanity at
Yeah, yeah.
large,
Just curious if
or?
you've kind of like been looking into like maybe towards the end of the year or the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't go there. I'm not at that level yet. There are
Okay.
some Vedic astrologers who are more attuned to the collective than I am.
Mm.
And
Mm.
they have been even guided by their teachers for many years to pursue that avenue.
Okay.
It's an avenue that's a little bit more advanced.
Mm.
And yes, but even they look at like the next few years only,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
as there are so many things that are in play at any given time.
I bet.
It's very hard to predict precise events.
Mm-hmm.
But astrologers in my lineage, because Vedic astrology is transmitted from teacher to student directly through lineages, it's an oral tradition. So that's something else that's different from Western.
Okay.
So within my lineage, some of the astrologers had predicted 2020.
Wow.
As early as 2010, they were talking, and some of them, by the way,
What?
were enlightened beings. I'm saying were because these two particular ones I'm thinking about, they passed away recently,
Okay.
but they were to the point where someone could come to them and they didn't need their date of birth and time. They would
Wow.
just, they knew the chart of the person showing up.
Wow.
But yeah, one of them had predicted 2020 and 2010. He was hearing a lot of stuff around 2012. And he told one of his students, who is a teacher now in my lineage, he told him, I don't know why people are talking about 2012 so much, because nothing's going to happen. You should start looking astrologically at 2020. And you should also start organizing big conferences where a lot of Vedic astrologers participate, come together to look at 2020 and that period of time astrologically. So he actually organized a big conference in 2012,
Wow.
focused on 2020 as a time of extreme darkness in the
That's,
world. So that was
yeah.
meant to be a time where Dharma, which is the right, Dharma is a complex principle, but we could call it also righteousness in the world, would be at the lowest point in a very, very long time.
Wow.
And so that was flagged as a year that would be also very difficult in other ways. But the light in the world was at a very low point.
Now,
Yeah.
so as we were kind of like approaching into 2020, for you personally, was this kind of like bringing some flashbacks, some memories of this discussion, or at the time, did you not know this information yet?
I did know
Oh,
it.
okay.
And my own spiritual teacher, Amma, had talked about it. So
Mm,
in India, there was widespread knowledge around
okay.
2020. And I was hearing it from many different sources. Some
Mm,
astrological, some not. But from India, yeah, 2020 was seen as a year that would be extremely difficult. And a lot of souls would depart. And yeah.
wow, that's incredible.
And so, yeah, we knew about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did that so were you already kind of like maybe say personally or business wise, were you already kind of like shifting things around like in the event that like, okay, there's this talk that's being had amongst the community, how can I sort of best prepare myself in the event that something like this should arise?
Again, it's an interesting question. Yeah. No, I'm not a prepper
Okay, okay.
by nature. And my husband isn't either. So we
Okay.
were just we go with our intuition and we go with the flow. And we ended up in a very good situation, but we happened to also be abroad and not knowing anyone. But it turned out just fine. However, I had asked him if he'd be willing to prepare, and he said no. So
Okay.
he said, we'll be taken care of, so I don't need
I love
to do that.
that. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that. And I
so
think,
we just
that
kind
there
of
isn't like a right or wrong way. Just curious as to like, if you having that kind of like insider information, what that brought up for you. And I think, yeah, I think it's beautiful to still like know this information and be like, but still choose, like you said, the more intuitive path to just allow things to unfold naturally and just trust that you're going to be taken care of.
yes, we trusted that and went with the flow. We also didn't have details as to what form would it take.
Okay.
So we knew something big is coming in 2020. We knew Dharma, righteousness would be and the light in the world would be at a low point, but we didn't quite know the form it would take. My teacher had alluded to things to do with breathing, but obviously, I mean, we never imagined
Right. Yeah.
what happened. So we thought, oh, maybe it's a solar flare. We were just like, imagining things, but we had no clue.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which is
then
probably
how do you
good you didn't
prepare?
prep. Yeah, exactly. It's probably good you
Yeah,
didn't
it's like,
prepare because
what do
then you
you?
just be driving yourself
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and my spiritual teacher, she did mention, Amma did mention, oh, everybody should grow their own vegetables. And even if you live in a
Mm,
flat, you should grow a few things. And,
mm,
you know, um, her idea being that people then have fresh food and something to look after while they were stuck in their flats,
yeah.
some living things to
Yeah.
remind them of life and keep them sane, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great
Things like
idea.
that. Yeah.
Even today
But
still.
yeah, but she didn't give any details. She didn't want
Mm,
us to, the idea being that we have to put in a bit of effort through meditation or whatever practice suits us
mhm.
to connect with within, right? With the
Yeah.
love within and our true nature and develop trust and faith
Mm,
in the
yes.
divine. And that's, I think, what was intended. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm curious for you in your practice. You said you've been doing Vedic astrology since 2012, right? What do you
Yes.
feel like is the most common concern that your clients come to you with?
A lot of my clients come to me at times of transition
Mm,
in their life. They are probably most likely ending one major astrological cycle when one
mm,
planet was calling the shots in their lives. And that's akin to ending a big chapter in your life.
right.
And they are beginning the cycle of another planet. These
Mm,
cycles are long, they can be 18 years, 19 years. So the transition at times can be tricky. They often say to me, I feel like throwing away everything in my life at
mm,
this moment, being done with it, including
yeah.
relationships, long-term relationships, marriages. At times, yeah, they really feel like they're done with those themes. And the people, a lot of the people they associated with during that
Hmm.
cycle, they felt drawn to, they also feel like they're a bit done with that as well.
Hmm.
And so they're changing friends, circles of friends, they're changing professions. Um, it can be tough. Yeah, so they come to me wanting a bit of, well, a bit of understanding around what is happening.
Yeah.
Why is this happening now? What does it mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are
Mm-hmm.
they moving into? They are having glimpses of it, but they are not clear.
Mm.
And with this lack of clarity comes often anxiety. And so we talk about what happened before and what's coming up and all the positives of the upcoming period, as well as some of the challenges, if I see any challenges. It's good to be a little bit forewarned, um, you know, but overall, this is what we cover.
Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The
Beautiful.
new themes coming into one's life.
Yeah.
Nothing is 100%. It's important that my clients understand that. Astrology is, at least in the Vedic world, it's a game of probabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And if I see something that has a 70% probability, I will mention
Okay.
70% probability of happening. But it's also important to know that it's just a possibility
Right.
and it's not set in stone. And the way we live our daily life, our intention,
Mm.
the kind of energy we show up with in the world, that's gonna make a big difference.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, even when things look stellar, they look amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, Unless we show up with a positive energy and attitude, um, maybe something good will happen, but to a much lesser extent.
Mm-hmm.
It's also
Mm-hmm.
important how we show up, our intent, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, because you threw out the percentage 70%. So, is there something that you're looking at looking at within their chart? Is it like a particular angle? Like, how are you gauging that 70% probability that you're going to want to mention to this, a circumstance to your client?
Yes. if I see several indications, all
Okay.
pointing in the same direction,
Okay.
it's like being in a river with a very strong current.
Ah.
The current is going to take you whether you want it or not, right? If
Okay.
it's something positive, you definitely want it.
Yeah.
The negatives for those, we also have remedies, something
Okay.
called upayas, remedies in Vedic astrology, things one can do to shift one's energy, one's vibration, so that
Mm.
the things that are less desirable, let's call them that way,
Mm-hmm.
don't manifest, or they
Mm.
manifest to a much lesser extent or for much shorter periods of time.
Mm. Okay. So if I'm going
So
through
there
a
are remedies.
transition, yeah, if I'm going through a transition like that, kind of like
Yes.
a pivotal point, what would be a remedy that you might prescribe?
Well, if a transition in itself doesn't require a remedy.
Okay.
So you could just be coming for the reading because you feel things are shifting, you feel a little bit in no man's land with it
Mm-hmm.
all, and you feel a bit confused as to why the things you enjoyed before now you don't enjoy as much
Right.
anymore. And the things, I had a client the other day, if I remember correctly, she suddenly stopped being creative one day,
Mm.
went from being very creative to a lot less. And so moments like that where you're confused as to what is
Mm.
happening, right? It doesn't have to be something disastrous or
Right.
negative, just a big change
Mm-hmm.
that can create confusion. So transitions in themselves don't require remedies, just a discussion around what I see happening, where the universal flow is going to take that person in the coming years, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
can um, make friends with it rather than
Mm-hmm.
resist it, because from resistance comes suffering,
Yes.
right? And we resist the unknown. It's a human characteristic, all of us.
Yeah.
And so as we feel the unknown approaching us, we tend to resist and suffer, right?
Mm.
But understanding, oh, this is just another chapter. I think you'll be doing different things. Let me walk you through them at this time. And the person is like, okay, well, fair enough,
Mm-hmm.
a new stage of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but what requires remedies is difficult. When I see some difficulties approaching, and if I see
Okay.
that that river current is quite strong, it doesn't necessarily even then mean that that thing will manifest.
Right.
But if I see a possibility, a probability, yes, we can talk about even meditation is an upaya, it's a remedy. As
Okay.
we expand and increase our awareness, less desirable upcoming things
Yeah. Yeah.
that are the result of some more difficult karmas. Difficult karmas are just some bad choices maybe that we
Yeah.
made in past life. We don't
Mm-hmm.
remember them, but it wasn't the right choice. And now we might go through something, a similar difficulty or a difficulty created by those choices. That's like another opportunity for us to learn that lesson, to figure it
Mm-hmm.
out and make a different choice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see something like that approaching, I do recommend that my clients maybe meditate more. Mantra, uh,
Okay.
you're familiar probably with
Yeah.
mantras, with
Yeah.
sacred syllables that we can repeat. They change our energy, our
Mm.
vibration, and purify our energy field. Those could be recited. There are mantras for each planet. You could recite a mantra for the specific
Ooh.
planet that's gonna bring you some,
Ooh, I didn't know
troubles.
that.
Yeah, that's gonna cause some mischief in your life,
Yeah.
right?
Like Saturn.
So yeah, one of them for sure. Mars can also,
Yeah.
really. So you can do that, or you could just, let's say you're not inclined in that direction, you're not interested, you could do some charity work. You could go
Mm.
to the local soup kitchen once a week for a few months and help out. You
Mm.
could donate clothes to people who don't have clothing. You can even give money to a food bank, you know, small things like that
Mm.
to ameliorate the the situation. Yeah.
All beautiful reminders.
Yes.
All beautiful
They're
reminders.
nothing extraordinary. They're just, or you could wear a specific gem. Now the gems, I don't work with them as much. They're more expensive,
Okay.
so telling a client after they paid for the reading, oh, now you have to buy this expensive gem and wear it in a specific way, and that can be a bit much. But they are used extensively in India, and their vibration does change ours.
Yeah. Yeah. I also work
And
with
they're
crystals
powerful.
too, so I totally agree.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're powerful. Um,
My
yeah.
other question, I know I mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but I was curious if is there, and I'm assuming there must be somewhere, so but correct me if I'm wrong, correlations between the chakras and Vedic astrology.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm so curious to
Um,
hear.
well, you could go there if you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe the planets can
Okay.
correlate
Okay.
with the chakras, excuse me.
Okay.
But Vedic astrology came into being way before Tantra did.
Mm.
The chakra system comes from Tantra,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a very recent development, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
um, within India's spiritual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So the Vedic sciences are 3,000 years old, 4,000. There are texts around Vedic astrology that are 3,000 years old.
Wow.
This gives you an idea.
Yeah.
Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, it's another Vedic science that's
Mm-hmm.
equally old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the chakra system is new. Yeah,
Mm.
it's quite new by comparison. I can't give you a date. My husband is an expert in all this. I'm not, but it's not that old at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was developed because it was seen as a much faster path to enlightenment. It's in
Mm-hmm.
fact the fastest,
Mm.
according to many teachers. Yeah,
The
the
chakras you're
fastest way
saying.
to wake up. Yeah,
That I haven't heard.
working with the chakras and the Kundalini
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Mm.
It is the fastest. We,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the modern world, maybe we tend to go about it too fast
Yeah.
because it requires a purification.
Yeah.
But it is it was developed as a fast system,
Mm-hmm.
of
So kind of
awakening.
going back to the remedies that you were mentioning earlier,
Yeah.
would that ever come into play, like working with a particular chakra, maybe meditating on a chakra or anything like that?
Um, Potentially,
Yeah.
it's not part of the texts, the
Mm-hmm.
ancient texts. As I say, they were not focused on chakras at the time. But yes, I could make a correlation. And if a client wanted to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea being always our energy is stuck in our first three chakras and it can't get
Yeah.
to the heart. The moment it gets to the heart, it goes to the brain very quickly and
Mm-hmm.
easily. So we are always, all our issues stem from we are overly identified with our body, with our emotions, our mind, and we are stuck in the lower centers of survival. So
Mm-hmm.
if a client were to ask, yes, I could recommend. For the heart, the easiest
Mm-hmm.
path is the yoga of love, of devotion. If a person
Mm-hmm.
does feel devotional, and opening the heart or doing heart opening exercises can clear a lot of the stuff in the lower centers anyways.
Mm.
So
Beautiful.
it's not like, but yeah, I could maybe,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. And I guess too, it kind of, I would
recommend
assume it probably
something.
also depends on like you mentioned earlier, the lineages and how people have kind of like evolved certain aspects of Vedic astrology within their lineage.
Yeah, it's true. But overall, it's not the chakra system and astrology. Maybe some astrologers use that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but in my lineage it hasn't been necessarily emphasized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certain planets, you know, that Saturn can keep us in survival and
Mm-hmm.
lack. And then
Mm-hmm.
immediately you can think of a chakra with that, right?
Yeah,
If
exactly.
the issue is caused by Saturn, then yes, we can
Mm-hmm.
draw
Yeah.
correspondence and work on that chakra for sure. But
Mm.
also, a lot of my clients, funnily enough, they don't, unless they ask me about this, I won't necessarily speak about this as
Mm-hmm.
to them,
Right.
as they might not at all be interested or familiar with this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't want them to leave the reading feeling overwhelmed, like now they have to,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, figure
I think
out their
it's just
chakras.
yeah, I know. I think it's just cool because you kind of hear all these different like about these different subsets. There's Vedic astrology, there's
Yes.
the chakra, like, there's Ayurveda. So there's like all these kind of like different layers to it. And so sometimes
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, do they overlap? Are they completely all, super separate? Like how do they kind of all work together within like the larger
Yes.
whole? So that's what I'm always fascinated about.
Yeah, and it was a very valid question. And Ayurveda and Vedic astrology work hand in hand. In
Mm-hmm.
India, Ayurvedic doctors, who, by
Mm-hmm.
the way, become Ayurvedic doctors after training as regular doctors, they go and do a degree in Ayurveda. And in Vedic
Wow.
astrology you can't do Ayurveda, the traditional medicine, without Vedic astrology.
Really?
So there are even doctors who wrote books around Vedic astrology because they use it, and you're
Hmm.
expected to know Vedic astrology.
Wow.
You work with the patient, you diagnose their body, and you work on, with them, but you're also supposed to look at their chart and
Mm.
see what type of karmic blockage might be
Mhm.
causing the current condition. And you might do things, recommend herbs that go with certain constellations
Mm.
to remove those. Yeah, so the planets
Wow.
have herbs associated with them, the constellations have, yeah. So
Wow.
it's used a lot.
That is
Yeah.
fascinating. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's all integrated in that way.
That's
For
so
many
beautiful.
thousands of years, and it was practiced uninterruptedly, so like without interruptions.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Um, and it's part of the daily life, Vedic astrology in India.
Mm. I love
Yeah, so
that.
people are aware of their birth star, and they use a lunar calendar sometimes. So a
Mm.
lot of rituals and ceremonies, and like the moon has to be in a certain part of the zodiac, and everybody in the culture is aware of that, and they
Oh,
all, yeah, respect that. Yeah.
that's so beautiful. Even just like hearing you
Yeah.
say that, my heart is just like, ah, feels all warm and fuzzy. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom. I feel like I definitely have much more of like a better kind of foundational understanding of Vedic astrology as before I had
Yeah.
like knew nothing. Absolutely
Yes.
nothing. So I
Most
really
people know very
appreciate
little. Yes.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing this and going so in depth with it all, and just kind of sharing a bit about, your scope and how you support your clients. If someone were interested in getting a session from you, like what's the best way to reach out? Like website or Instagram? How do you
Well, through, yeah, Maha Rose, the Maha Rose
okay, right. And
website.
through Maha
Yeah,
Rose, of
that's
course.
how, yeah, they can easily reach me that way. I do have
Okay.
my own website, but
Okay.
they can book through Maha Rose. And they can learn more about me on my website
Hmm. Beautiful. Yeah.
if
And
they
we'll be
want to
sure
know
to
more about me.
yeah, I can link that. We'll be sure to link that
Yeah,
in the description for the video so they can
sure,
reach
of
out if they
course.
want to.
Yeah. And if
Thank
they
you
have
so
any questions
much.
prior to a reading, they're welcome to ask their questions and
Oh,
I'll
nice.
respond. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us.
Well,
Any
yeah, thank you for the
final
opportunity.
words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us before we go?
Oh gosh. um, Not really. Nothing comes to
No
my
pressure, no
just off the
pressure.
top of my head. Just we are all here to evolve, raise our vibration, raise our consciousness,
Hmm.
and all these are tools. I see astrology as a tool
Yeah.
for helping us
Mhm.
achieve that. And with that comes greater happiness, fulfillment, contentment, and peace. And yeah, this is, I think, the gift of astrology and in general, and Vedic
Yeah.
astrology in
Yeah.
particular.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect. We can leave it right there.
All
Well,
right. Well,
thank you
thank you very
so
much,
much.
Amickoleh.
Thank you,
And
Oana.
yeah, have a
Thank
lovely day.
thank you likewise.
Yeah, thank you very much.